All right, Coach, you're there. You're welcome to Omaha. What's it like to be now in Omaha? Hours, a day or so away from starting the tournament in a tournament that's probably not going to be forgotten anytime soon by people involved in the sport.
I I think just looking at the whole thing as a total, we're having a tournament. We actually made it to the days where we're having a tournament, and 48 teams are going to be able to compete for the national championship, and that in itself is a relief because there was no guarantee of that happening this year. So I think on one hand, it's a relief that the tournament's being held. Obviously, we're ecstatic that we're part of it. We're in a weird couple day quarantine, I guess, where each team gets tested just to make sure everybody's negative. They're pretty strict on our bubble, what we're allowed to do, what we're not allowed to do. Fortunately, there's plenty of things that we can do recreationally. We can use a fitness room. There's things that we can do so we don't have to stay in our hotel room all day, but there's not a whole lot to do. It's not like we're going to the world famous Omaha Zoo or getting a nice Omaha steak or anything like that. But I mean, really, to answer your question, it's nice that we actually arrived at this day, and it's even more nice that we're here to be a part of it.
You're open up against High Point. What can you tell us? What have you learned about High Point here since you found out they were going to be your first round opponent?
High Point is a very low air team that scores a lot of points. And I think whenever you're trying to look at a team you don't know, obviously you're watching film and you're trying to pick up on strengths and weaknesses. But to get an overall picture of a team, you look at what teams have the ability to beat themselves and what teams don't. High Point is one of those teams that does not beat itself. They make you go out and beat them. So they're a High Point team. We're right around 18 and a half points that we score per set. They're right around 17 and a half. So they're not that far from us. And then they're also very low. They only give up about 7 points a set, that's just not that much. So we have to go out there and we have to score points against them because they're not going to give anything to us. That would explain why they're undefeated. That would explain why they ran roughshod over pretty much their whole conference. It's not an easy out for anybody. That's a team that a lot of programs wouldn't want to face in the first round because they're just not going to go out there and beat themselves. They're quick. They play great defense. They do a lot of little things right, but more importantly, they play the serve pass game well. They score points and they don't give up very many points. And that in itself is a recipe for strong success.
I don't know if you're familiar with their head coach, Ryan Meek, in his third season there. He's kind of helped turn that program around, having success there. What stands out about them when you watch them as from a coaching standpoint in their system? What stands out about them?
Well, certainly when you look at the team, I think it's got the hallmark of Ryan's pedigree and the places that he's been and the coaches he's worked under. I'm sure the same as, people look at UCF and say it's got a little bit of USC and a little bit of national team and a little bit of Michigan State, a little bit of Utah, a little bit of Bradley, from what we all bring to it. But certainly it's got his fingerprints all over it. And that's the discipline. That's the discipline, low air, don't beat yourself, take your opportunities to score. Really they're a lot like we are in a lot of ways. And he's done a fantastic job building that team and getting them to where they are right now. Like I said, going undefeated, it's not an easy task. I don't care who you are. I don't care what league you're in. That is, you can never take that for granted. So I congratulate him on a great year, and we'll look forward to sharing the court with them on Wednesday.
Is the preparation, how is it different, if it is different at all, with a team that you're not as familiar with? You don't, maybe play them usually like you do, for example, Florida State. I remember last year you even joked, we knew Florida State right from the get-go because of geography. You're probably familiar with some of the players from recruiting and things like that. More complicated to prepare, longer, or is it really not that big of a deal of an adjustment?
No, it's not really that big of a deal because volleyball is volleyball. And there's only so many things you can do with the sport because of the way the rules are. you can only have 3 front row players, and so they can only do so much, and you can only do so much with them. It's really all about seeing what their strengths are, being able to eye sequence what a team is doing, and making sure that you're looking at the right thing at the right time. Because a good coach is going to try to get you to say, oh, look over here. And then when you look over here, something's happening over here, sleight of hand. And that's certainly what a high point team is capable of doing is getting you to look at something, but it's the wrong thing. So we're just going to have to be disciplined with our eye work. And we're going to have to make sure that we know what our assignments are. And we're going to have to be just, again, disciplined on where we're supposed to be when we're supposed to be there.
Facilities. You've been outspoken. Other coaches have been outspoken over the last handful of days about the facilities, the setup, everything. What can you tell us now? Because you've been outspoken, both positive and some things that you were concerned about, honestly, which
Sure.
I think
what's
your thoughts?
I'm certainly not afraid to, call things out when I think there's issues, but I also think it's important when you do that you're given props and kudos to those that deserve it. Nobody's trying to have a bad tournament or a bad looking tournament. I think the one thing that fans in general need to remember, and this is a big deal, women's basketball brought up the concern that they only had 6 NCAA administrators running that tournament, whereas the men's basketball tournament had 12. The women had a rightful gripe. They had half of what the men have. Women's volleyball has one administrator. Kristen Fassbender is running this tournament by herself with the volleyball committee. And so while it's easy to throw darts at a dartboard and say, there's underperformance or there's lack of this and lack of that, I think the bigger question is, how in the world can a men's basketball tournament have 12 administrators, women's basketball have 6, we have 1. And not only do we have 1, she's also running ours. She's running the Frozen Flow 4 at the same time, and she's running 2 others. So, really, we have a quarter of an administrator. I saw Kristen when we were over testing, and she looks stressed. It's like the weight of the world is on her shoulders right now because she's trying to make everything look right. Plus, she has all of us coaches in our demands and the things that we want, and rightfully so. She understands. But she's got all that on her shoulders, and she's trying to run this and the Frozen Four at the same time. So again, as concerned as we were about an opportunity where we could get our games with commentators on TV, something that's never been done by the NCAA, but it's always been done by the local host. That's actually part of the bid package. And so I think it's a bit of a misstatement to say, well, we've never really done first and second round with commentators. True, but we've always done it in pods. And part of getting that bid was your ability to broadcast the first and second round. So that was that part. The second part was obviously the weight room, where there were no plans to really have a weight room. There was an area, there was space, there was really not great guidance on what the weight room facility could look like or how you use it. We're basically told to bring bands and light weights that you could use. Finally, they came out, they clarified that. They clarified that they're going to have a broadcast team on every match. So, retroactively, they're doing everything they can. I don't think this falls on the volleyball committee. I don't think this falls on Kristen, who I know has always worked so hard to make our championship better and better every year. I just think that they're put in a position where they're working retroactively based on what coaches are saying and complaining about. And, so I think it's really, it's important that we as coaches point out things that we think aren't right, that are big deals to our athletes, rehab areas, sports medicine facilities, things like that. I think we have to bring those up, but we also have to have patience and grace to understand that right now, the NCAA has probably understaffed our championship, and the person that is doing it is trying to be the jack of all trades, and she's doing an amazing job.
I'm glad you said that, because obviously I've dealt with softball. It's the same boat. This is and I've talked to people. This is unique. There's so many sports going on right now. Soccer's going on. Basketball just concluded. You got all the spring sports about to have their championships. And you've never had to have a tournament be moved to one spot. I remember you've commented that, hosting the 2018 regional is not easy. And that was a 14 pod. I can't imagine trying to fill out a 48 teams in one location. It's unique, right? And I think it's more about communication than anything. And like you mentioned, it's not as easy as people, I think some in social media have made it out to be. It's not that if I don't think there's an agenda here or any biased or anti or anything like that, right?
I think there's very few cities that could pull this off. Omaha, thank goodness, is one of them. Indianapolis is one of them. But there's very few places that have the volunteer structure set up, that have the administrator structure set up, that have they have the College World Series here. They've had Olympic trials here. They know what it's like to hold a big event. The volleyball championships have been here several times. And the infrastructure in place to hold something like this, there's not very many places in the country. And you could tell they are working overtime to make it as comfortable as possible for all the participants, coaches, programs, to settle in and be able to play this championship. So again, props out to Omaha for what they're pulling off. I think if I was to change anything, you've got, as I'm talking to you, I'm looking out the window, I'm looking right at Creighton University across the highway from our hotel. Omaha Marion High School is a beautiful high school. There's other beautiful high schools in the area. University of Omaha is off in the other direction. I mean, those are all great places that maybe we could have had groups of 8, and maybe we could have done it that way.
Spread it out a little bit. Spread it out like basketball did. Basketball played in different buildings.
Who am I to second guess it? I mean, they did what they did for a reason. It's really easy for me to sit here in this chair and say could have done, should have done. I just think it seems like they came up with this idea and they just ran with the idea, and that's okay. I mean, I'm not in their shoes, so I can't second guess. But there's a lot of great places that tournament could have been held here in Omaha. Plenty of facilities, probably could have been spread out a little bit, but it's neither here nor there. We're all here. Everybody's got a room. We can study film. We can do our lifting. We can do our training. We can get prepared and have a great tournament.
Let's talk about McKenna Melville. Since we last spoke, she won the American Conference Player of the Year, second night to win the American Player of the Year. Delana Sarton did it in 2014. 8th UCF player all-time to win a Conference Player of the Year award in any conference. She's currently 27 digs away from being the 6th UCF night player to have over 1,000 kills and over 1,000 digs in her career. Joining a list includes Marian Metzkitz, who might be one of the more underappreciated UCF players of all time, played from 91 to 94, was part of those conference championships. Tyra Harper, Hall of Famer, obviously Olympian. Renata Menchikova, who's in your also Hall of Famer. Aaron Campbell, who you coached, and Kia Bright, who you coached. That's the list that McKenna's on the cusp of joining. Just talk about her winning that Player of the Year and that list I told you, because 1,000 kills, 1,000 digs, that's a special group. Not many players can pull that off.
Well, you see it in other programs. Sometime in their senior year, if they were a 4-year starter, they're knocking on the door of that 1,000 club. McKenna finished her sophomore, and she's into a truncated junior season, and she's knocking on the door of that. So I think that says something for her. But, I guarantee you when she's sitting in front of this camera talking to you, she's going to talk a lot more about her teammates than she is herself, because it's her teammates that allows her to do all these great things that she's been able to do. And I'm sure she's had a great experience and a great ride here, but it's because of the people that are all around her that are setting her up for that success. It's because of the coaches that are working with her that have helped her set up, for that success. So, she's going to be really happy and excited about being one of those volleyball players that's going to, probably end up in the rafters here someday, maybe even more. But she's going to be the first to tell you it's got a lot more to do than with just her. And, obviously she means a lot to this program, but it takes a lot of people just to help her be who she is.
When I spoke to her last, she said she changed her major. She wants to get into coaching the high school level. Obviously, her mom's a Hall of Fame coach at Minnesota. But do you see some when you coach her and you see her, do you see some of that kind of instincts that, hey, she could be a coach down the road that maybe she got from her mom and obviously her knowledge of the sport? Do you see some of that when you see her playing or when you're communicating with her?
Eric, I've seen it since she's a sophomore in high school. Watching her play on her 16 and under team, coaching and saying a little tidbits of information to her teammates that a coach would say. All right, now we've got this angle, you've got this, make sure you're watching out for that. Those are things that we say from the bench. She's been doing that since I remember watching her play for the first time. She still continues to do that. She's still the person on the bus. Okay, everybody, make sure you have IDs ready before I can get up and say, hey, make sure you have your IDs ready. You know, it's already ingrained in her DNA to have structure, organization, want to know what's going on, making sure that everybody's on the same page. And I'll tell you, there's not a single player in the program that is studying the scouting report more, sitting with coaches, watching video of herself and of other teams. It's amazing how much preparation she does, not only on her own game, but on her opponents. It's second to none, actually. How much preparation, how much discussion she wants to have with the coaches about, well, what if we do this, or what if we try this, or should we put this in? Goodness, it's like having a quarterback, in the offensive game planning room saying, hey, I think this is going to work. I think this is Peyton Manning, stuff. This is John Elway stuff. This is stuff that coaches sit back and just let the quarterback dictate what's going to happen on the field. Now, she doesn't quite have that much of a green light, but man, it's not far off because, she really does understand the game. She understands the nuance of the game. She understands the little components of the game. She understands how you free up certain players. She understands court coverages. She understands blocking schemes. She understands that when a ball is here, a player is here, the only thing that she can do is this. That's really high-level stuff. That's stuff you see in professionals that are 26, 27, 28 years old. She's known it for a long time. And, it's got a lot to do with growing up in the gym with a mom who's a great volleyball mind. But it's really her effort. It's her intensity. It's her commitment to preparation that has put her in that position.
Last question. What's going to be the keys for your team to be successful here and against High Point and, hopefully make a deep run here in this tournament?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, we're not even talking about anything but High Point. The keys to this are really, it's not different than any other tournament match. You get yourself under control. You get as much of your routine down as possible. We've been doing the same routine for, I don't know how many matches we played this year, but it's the same routine, and it's going to be the same routine. Routine causes comfort. Sometimes you hate routine because it's mundane, but the reason why you have routine is so when you're in a situation like this, you're just going through your routine. It's no different. Your schedule is your schedule no matter what. So we're going to be on the same schedule we've always been on. The next key, I think, is going to be how do we settle into the environment? How quickly can we settle into the serve pass game? Because I think both teams really depend on the serve pass game to then exert their will in other areas of the game. I think we have to go out, we have to be physical, we have to keep them off balance because like I said, they score a lot of points. So it's gonna be a shootout type of game. How can we slow them down enough? They're probably not gonna have a lot of errors, but how do we slow them down so they can't score as many points as they normally score? And that's gonna have to come from our serve and then from how we attack them, where we're just keeping them off balance. Are we going to be able to stop them? Probably not. We'll do our best, but really for us, it's how do we find a way to exert our will as early as we can. Routine, settling down, and then going out and using what works best for you, which for us is our serve block game.